honor for us. I don't want to say too much about the two conveners. I just want to name them because they will introduce themselves and frame their own work. But this is basically a webinar workshop that is part of the EASA mentorship program and is open to all, even if you're not an EASA member. So this is the first of a three-part series with doctors Sertaç Sehlikoglu at University College London and Roberta Raffaetà, who is at Foscari at University of Venice. And we are that is Sultan Doughan, and Panas Karampampas, members of the EASA executive team, the hosts of this session. So I will basically hand over to Roberta and Sertaç.
Thank you so much, Sultan and Panas, for organizing this and the support of EASA. So good afternoon, everyone. I will briefly introduce myself. I'm an associate professor at Foscari University of Venice, but I don't live in Venice. I live in a rural area 4 hours from Venice, for both choice and necessity. And I had a long path into precarity, more than 15 years, across Italy, Australia, United States, Switzerland. And this was interfacing with the reproductive precarity. And my work in precarity ended only at age 44. I'm now 48, thanks to an ERC starting grant that I got it at that age because I had 3 children. So from 2021, I passed from being at the lowest ladder of academia to leading an ERC plus 4 additional projects, overall supervising up to 13 collaborators and co-directing a research center at Foscari, the Center for Environmental Humanities. My involvement in this seminar started when at the last EASA Barcelona conference, I attended the Prec-Antro workshop. Honestly, I didn't attend that kind of workshop before because I was either too desperate or I had no money even to participate at the conference. But in my new position as a PI, I felt the duty to be updated to better understand how to contribute to alleviate precarity from my own position. So this is the way in which I understand leadership, not hiding asymmetries of power, rather taking full responsibility for them and trying to be as much as accountable as possible to create better conditions and opportunities for as many as possible. This today is not intended to be a mainstream managerial course in leadership and diversity. I am not a coach, neither Sertaç, but I have attended some courses in leadership before starting as a PI, and then I have metabolized and critically integrated those information in my practice as a PI. And there were many challenges and occasions for reflection. And after all, I'm an anthropologist. So as all of you here today, I apply an anthropological gaze on everything. Therefore, my reflections are part of an uninterrupted political practice of reflexivity, but also an attempt of intervening into given for granted neoliberal models of academia. Sertaç and my desire is to posit leadership as a collective practice, not an individual one, because this is needed for political transformation. We are not standing here as a role model for leadership, but to share an ongoing path made of errors, failures, and some success to redefine leadership and invite a collective effort on that. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you so much, Roberta.
Shall I go? Hello, everyone.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Sertaç Sehlikoglu. I am an anthropologist based at UCL. I, like Roberta, I'm also an ERC PI. I'm completing mine in less than 30 days, actually. And I got my ERC project when I was a postdoctoral researcher, a junior research fellow at Cambridge, which means I applied to this large grant towards the end of my tenure there, in a very kind of survivalist mode. Everybody here might be at some level familiar with that. And I was lucky enough to get that. And later on, it has also, again, luckily, granted me a permanent post at the University College London. I keep saying lucky because I do believe that the level of precarity we have in academia right now is so intense that those who find their way into secure positions are not the best ones, they're the luckier ones. It's important to understand this for some political awareness, I suppose. And I do believe in mentorship and establishing supportive academic environment because of the very challenges embedded into academia as an elite institution. I have been offering mentorships for about 8 years now. I did mentor over 50 people so far. And I've been offering also seminars on allyship and how to do mentorship, etc. It is prompted by a mentorship I received from a junior colleague. Her name, I want to say her name, she's great, Alice Wilson, who is based at Sussex now. She was a postdoctoral researcher, and when I was trying to get support in how to get my book proposal accepted, it wasn't any of the senior permanent faculty members around me who have guided me, met me, read closely, and provided detailed guidance. It was her, another junior scholar, and it made me realize. And when I thanked her, she said, you know, the level of thanking I'm receiving from you suggests that, you know, like the seniors are not taking up the responsibility properly. And it made me think that mentorship or being collegial and supportive ally doesn't come from seniority. It does come from you know, some sort of political awareness. And this is actually, like, to me, a continuation of those conversations that's been going on for several years, and I do hope the torch will spread. And thank you, EASA and Sultan and Anna and Hayal, of course, for initiating this. I think it's very, very important, and I'm fully aware of their political commitment to this. So thank you.
Thanks, Sertaç. Yeah, please go ahead with the program. I know you have a very tight program with, you know, Q&As and breakout rooms. So feel free.
Oh, okay. So it's we did kind of plan this in a particular way. We split today's session into 3 modules, everyone. And the first module, Module A, is kind of enabling us to start the conversation on women's academic leadership ecosystem. But before we kind of start all the practical needs, I want to say that in the next over an hour, you will be hearing us focusing very much on practical advice. And Roberta and I had talked about this. We had a couple of meetings, well, multiple meetings, let's put it, where we were kind of agreeing that we have so much to say to critically analyze academia in the age of precarity as an elite institution where certain type of people are targeted much more heavily than others. But these kind of long critical analysis is not what is immediately needed by anyone, and that's not what we should offer to EASA. We should focus on the practical advice. Having said that, we are also aware that the practical advice doesn't mean that, one, if you follow these advice, you will get out of the academia as a hell or like advance your position, but also most importantly, it's not to create an illusion of kind of we have to do more. like when we do more, we are actually becoming part of that big machine as well, and we are aware of this. So it's not like, don't think of this a way of pinkwashing any of the problems existing in academia. I want to kind of just start with stating that. But we do have some kind of experiences, hoping might be helpful to share, and that's what we will focus on in this instance, and then maybe we will critique more afterwards with friends at a nice restaurant in the next EASA, hopefully. EASA conference. Okay, yeah, so this first module, the first section of today is focusing on academic leadership ecosystem and women's role in it. And I want to say, when I was kind of stepping into the ERCP ship, I'll be kind of basing most of my notes on that, which I had secured within the first 4 years after my PhD, I guess. All of the trainings available, like, first of all, nobody is assuming that you will know how to be a line manager. That's a very official term in the UK. I hate that term, but it's kind of used very heavily. Or leader, or learn how to be senior, or kind of navigate across the institution. Nobody teaches you any of that. There are trainings offered, and my university, UCL, is very kind of proud of offering a series of trainings. Some of them are much more tailored than others. But as somebody who have taken almost all of the top available trainings available for the UCL members, and on LinkedIn, there are some on LinkedIn about project management. There are some on specifically leadership in academia, etc., like all of them. I have to say they are incredibly gender neutral and completely unaware of the particularities existing in the power mechanisms of academia. And therefore, I was constantly finding myself in positions where I didn't know how to act, didn't know how to navigate. And most importantly, unless you come from a particular class background, you also don't know how to be a boss, if that makes sense. It is kind of, it's a very distinctive social capital. And if you don't kind of, if you didn't grow up watching your, I don't know, parents give, regulate people or give orders, you really have no idea as to how to operate. More importantly, you still carry these kind of very junior and precarious impulses. Which means when you find yourself in a position like a PI-ship or any kind of leadership, you are actually almost like pressed between the hosting institution, where they will be demanding you do certain things, which are all designed, for lack of better term appearing in my head right now, to take advantage of your project. So they are pressing from top towards you and trying to navigate across these pressures. And it does take some time to understand how to kind of handle these pressures. So the first advice that I could find in year 3 of my appointment, I guess, is what I said at the very beginning: to find mentors, to find people who had gone through similar set of challenges. A lot better if you can find female mentors, especially in management, because they do know how to handle men. They do know how to handle these like certain type of like situations. So find mentors and be strategic about it. And when I say mentorship, I mean this: if you can identify like 2-3 people who are like further along in their careers, who understand the specific challenges you face, the specifics in terms of, again, class and race and gender included, they can provide much more practical advice. You need to be able to establish a trust relationship, though, because you don't want any of the things you have shared with them to get out. Some of the things you are sharing will be about certain tensions you might be having with your head of department or your staff members, okay? not your staff members at your hosting institution. So ideally, at least one, I think, should be a woman of color, even if you yourself don't consider yourself as one. It's going to be incredibly helpful. And you need to, and it's kind of, I know it doesn't feel kind of natural, but if you send an email where you're introducing yourself and saying, these are the things I need, and I kind of would be very happy if you can meet with me once or twice in the next this many months, they would be often very interested in like supporting a young scholar in those manners. Another thing I want to say, and that's like unexpectedly important, but because you will be like, again, as I said, operating through these kind of very junior and precarious impulses, even if you are no longer in that position technically, you will be like very much inclined to share the struggles that you are having with your team members or other people within your department. I strongly, like with all the kind of, like if I can, I have to say I strongly advise against that, because you are no longer their peers, and it will have a very toxic effect on them. It won't be like you are sharing your struggles and they will support you, and then finally you will kind of find a solution collectively. That's not how the message will be conveyed. So it's kind of the other practical advice I have is to really be strategic about with whom you are sharing the problems. Even if your problem is not about any of the team members, even if it's about, I don't know, the institute, your department's like top staff member, right? Kind of, oh, this person keeps asking us these issues, and I think this person might be, you know, having XYZ prejudices. Like, don't ever get into that route. It's not going to help anyone. Instead, focus on kind of finding solutions through mentorship. Another thing, a set of things I want to say is all based on, so these are all based on becoming a women leader or becoming a woman in seniority. You need to learn how to establish structures in a way that will create completion of tasks. So what I mean by that is that at the beginning, I was thinking if I have these regular meetings where I distribute tasks and then follow up, that will be kind of provide a good progress. But most of the time, it's very easy for these kind of task distribution style to turn into another, you know, bossing tension, and it's not healthy. Instead, try to delegate them in sometimes something as simple as establishing an Excel sheet and directing everybody's attention to that shared like Excel sheet where you can see everybody's progress might be helpful. And delegating tasks is never a good strategy, I found. Instead, you need to think about delegating the processes. Otherwise, there's this risk of turning into a micromanager, which is, again, killing people's creativity and not helping you in the process. It's extremely a tiresome process. And I kind of, if I can, I think I'm getting to the end of my time, but I want to say something from my heart, really. You need to be prepared for your authority to be questioned by everyone. So what most of the time we think that, oh, when a woman becomes more senior in academia, they will be questioned by especially male peers or like kind of like other scholars in the same or more senior levels. Yes, that might be the case, but you will be surprised how it goes beyond that. When you are requesting a simple paperwork, when you are in need of support from even the kind of staff members, all of them might be questioning your, I don't want to say authority, but maybe your competence and expertise. it was a long way for me to realize how not to take any of them like personally, and instead focus on the completion of the conversations moving forward. I even authored a Medium piece a couple of years ago that says a brown woman is never senior, because I was constantly being questioned by every staff member, and that was a kind of a huge element of dragging me down. I have to say, I have learned quite a lot from keeping records and documents of everything. Normally, I have a very kind of messy style of thinking and writing, or kind of like even my own career progress. I kind of have more on, I find it like kind of a room for creativity, but when you are trying to operate across institutions, the order and archiving all of the conversations and tagging them becomes very important. Um, um, and I knew, in order for you to kind of understand how to become a woman leader, you need to also turn your position into a supportive supportive position, I guess. Kind of what I mean is the following. We will be talking more on this in the module B, so I'm not going to kind of waste our breath on this. But you need to make sure, when you are trying to navigate between the pressures of managing your team and dealing with the pressures of your institute, you need to make sure you are handling this in a way that will turn into an advantage of your team members. That can come in the way of, like, sometimes it's going to be in the form of your team members need to teach XYZ, your team members need to join XYZ teams, the kind of, so there will be like very significant institutional demands. But when you are navigating it, you need to make sure you are doing this only within the kind of needs of your team members, so that you won't, not only that you won't be pressed, but also your team members are your team members only for a few years, and they will be off to applying to other jobs. So their precarity is much more kind of crucial to understand, and in that navigation process. How am I doing with the time? Did I run out? Sultan.
I didn't take the time.
Okay, all right. I think I have
it was supposed to be 10 minutes.
Okay, I will save it to the next module, so that I won't take too much time. So maybe some of them will be asked in the Q&A.
Okay, so I continue from that, and I point out that this workshop has been taught for both current but also aspiring women leaders. And even if it might sound as contradictory, we think that it's very consistent and very important to think these two categories together, because academia is an ecosystem, really. And as the modules say, it's important to make early investments for future impact too. So I'm going here to focus a bit more also on the perspective of who is an aspiring leader, but also probably I'm going to focus more on I take the perspective of who works in a Southern European context. We have heard for Sertaç that she had a number of possibilities to have a course in leadership, something that I do not have as easily in my own institution. As I said before, leadership is a term that comes from the field of management. I take the time, sorry. And there is very common and popular, but has little purchase in academia. And I think there are a number of reasons for that lack. One is the hierarchical model that we know very well, this huge gap between tenure professors and other figures, but also the traditional model of supervision that is often understood as a privately negotiated relationship between a supervisor and the researcher, rather than as a collective responsibility and a service. This one-to-one model is vulnerable then to various forms of exploitation, manipulation, and toxicity. I'm not here meaning to diminish the importance to have good mentors. They are so important. I had great mentors in my life. They saved me. But you know, it's important to stand on the shoulders of giants. But an important thing is always to remind that not all giants have a good ethics, right? So some supervisors are intellectually very sophisticated, brilliant, and prestigious, but might be sometimes oppressive on postdoc creativity and their agency, not putting their vision, their needs as a priority, but rather looking at their own ego or interest. So it's very important for you, if you are not yet in a position of power, but you aspire so to have this very objective understanding since the start and decide what you want to have, what you need to have. As Sertaç just said, it's important to have good mentors. And I will speak more about that also in the next model. At other times, this close supervision postdoc scheme does not fit for a number of reasons. And those reasons impact women more heavily. One is the necessity to balance family and other care engagements with work. And these care engagements might be for choice or sometimes are forced by the social structure and pressures. Another aspect linked to that is the temporality of reproduction in whatever form one wants to intend it. But also a third aspect I want to highlight is also there might be some people that, again, by choice or necessity, do not live in urban areas, but they are more peripheral. They are not living in big urban centers where there is the big intellectual and cultural life. So it's important to allow those voices also to express, because they can offer a non-conventional perspective. So if you feel like you are in one of those spots, I think it's so important to also choose the right networking that allow you to express yourself, even crossing through, you know, these more conventional centers of knowledge production. So in general, women, even when they are not tenured, might feel not be interpellated by the term leadership. And I use here the term interpellation, as Butler said, you know, that you don't feel to be, that is nothing that concerns you, it doesn't pertain you, is not relevant for you. This has been my impression for so many years, because this gender gap and the old prejudice, hard to die, still intrude really in the perception of women as not supposed or not apt to be leaders. And this is really, it goes beyond rationality. It's really an embodied affective thing. And many times women are infantilized, you know, cute and young, even if you have a number of years on the back of your shoulders, or administrative service of teaching or research or whatever, you're always young. That's a good news. And if not complying with the conventional system, you might be labeled as arrogant. Indeed, what you are trying to do is really to reconfigure how power works in the ecosystem you are working. So this might kind of sound a kind of depressing, but there are good news, because a number of people, colleagues, have taken these not as obstacles, but as occasions to overcome them in a creative way and to improve our academic environments. So this is what we are trying to do. And in the next section, I'm going to go more on practical suggestions derived from my experience.
Thank you so much, Roberta and Sertaç. I mean, this was a lot of information. I'm sure there are some questions. There's definitely one question posted. Is this a good time to take questions for you?
Yeah, indeed.
Okay. So
there is
absolutely.
a question, but I'm not sure if it has already answered, but still. Anna Naderi, sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, is asking if the questions is how to be a good boss or try to rethink of leadership and management in a way where we can make the structure more inclusive and less hierarchical and patriarchal and capitalistic in a way. Or it's an ideal idea in which already exists an academic structure.
Can I say there is an element of this that already is existing in academic structure? And when you are kind of bringing yourself into that structure, you will realize that you don't fit in, which means there might be times when you're kind of you being the leader of your team wouldn't even make sense to your own team members. Okay, then it will put you into this very strange position. Will I kind of impose myself even more? Like, how should I navigate in this? Like, what should, like, we've been talking about these things with other kind of people of color. I have a number of like friends in other institutions. They had experienced things like their PhD. I don't have a PhD student. This is not about me, not an example from me, but their PhD students not showing up to regular, like compulsory quote unquote meetings because they decided to be friends with kind of a whiter and younger permanent faculty member, thinking that it will kind of help with their career. And then all of a sudden, so what kind of a structure we are in? That's kind of one of the things we need to understand. Becoming a leader will have certain requirements, and you will be facing with challenges you weren't prepared. Like all of that's why I started with all of these trainings. The trainings that are available to potential leaders are designed for those who are born into leadership, like kind of average people who are born into leadership, so they won't be having. So it's, yes, it is structured in academia, but when you yourself, including I think Anna yourself, when you are becoming a team leader, you will be seeing certain other set of challenges because the way the power system is structured in academia, you will be completely unprepared. So I think Roberta has a couple of things to add. I think that's
yes, just a couple of things, because this kind of this question, Anna, thank you very much, anticipates some of the things we will see in the next module, but also mirrors many of the discussions Sertaç and I and others had about this issue. It's really a dilemma, right? How to navigate these different tensions. What surprised me, and what Sertaç and I probably have in common, is that we both entered as PIs with this will to help and to include more and so on. But actually, probably we need to make a step back, because not everyone wants that kind of configuration, even if they are postdocs. It depends from all the different aspects that compose their biography, and so it is important to think to work toward a more inclusive academia, but at the same time it's possible to do it and to realize it with good allies.
And a couple of things that is very important. So it's not just about how the team is structured, whether it's egalitarian or not. It's very important for your team members and your colleagues. It's not just team members for those who have the opportunity of running a grant. It's also like when you are putting together a special issue, you are a team leader as the editor, aren't you? So in those moments, you need to turn this position into another. So kind of as soon as we understand that the kind of becoming less hierarchical, people and kind of having all of these ideals. It's not about that small team. It's kind of when the problem is much broader, then the question is, how are we going to take action about it? So I value citation politics, for instance. Like it took a while for me to kind of explain and then make sure my team members are citing each other, even like as simple as that. And then the broader team, right? The kind of citation politics, extremely important. That's where the allyships work. And it's not just kind of just minor citations mentioning this person and that person. It's kind of establishing scholarship based on each other, right? So like kind of, that's, I think the question is very important because it has elements for us collectively in this moment, in these series, to think creatively, because there's no written code for any of that. There's no training, no written code. Yeah, like kind of citation politics, other networking practices, other allyship practices need to be kind of brought into conversation.
Yes, very true. Also from my experience, to create this politics of reciprocal citation, especially in an environment like ERC, which are intended as collective project. Therefore, we give and take ideas all the time, right? But there is another question, so it's good to hear.
Laura, please go.
Yes, thank you so much. Building on the previous question, I'm just questioning because you also mentioned about people of color. So I think this is also something I wanted to ask you about, how to navigate, because in a way you want to be recognized, like it's sometimes necessary to be recognized as this person or from this point of view in academia, because you need also to create this space for people like you and for this inclusivity. But also in a way, I feel like sometimes when you are doing this, because it's kind of like this very neoliberal perspective of like, I don't know, putting people in also fixed identities, that like sometimes it's turning opposite on you as like not something beneficial. So like how as a student you would maybe, or like not as a student in academia, you would maybe navigate this, because yeah, I'm studying PhD in anthropology in Budapest. So yeah, it's always, I'm coming from Syria, so there's always this like, do I want to mention this all the time or speak from this point of view, because like it is needed for me to be in this position studying in Europe, but at the same time sometimes I'm like, people would only see me from this point of view. Thank you.
It's kind of a blessing and a curse. No, I have to say, no, I was just joking, seriously. It's kind of, so nothing is set on stone. One thing I want to say is that, like, kind of, and that's the biggest challenge of being, oh, please stay, I want to see you. One of the biggest challenges is that one decision and one kind of principle you establish at that point won't work in the other point. Right? So yes, people will kind of, based on your background, people want to fixate you as, oh, coming from the Muslim perspective, coming from the Middle Eastern perspective, coming from this race perspective, they try to box you. And then as soon as they box you, then you have to undo this. So it's not like about one single moment. Like kind of, I'm saying this as a person who was boxed into a hijabi category for a very long time and was feeling really suffocated in it. And then as soon as I took off my hijab, people were like listening to the same paper and saying it's such a nuanced analysis, whereas like a month earlier they were like, which religious perspective are you coming from, right? So you have to kind of, so I'm not saying change your position or tell people you are Spanish or, take off your hijab, but what I'm saying is that for each moment you have to come up with another surprise effect, because like in the patriarchal mechanisms, right, and the patriarchal ideologies, as they are multiple, the faces of like racism is also multiple. So they will use one card at one point and they will use another card at another point. So you kind of, unfortunately, it comes with experience, but that's exactly why allyship is important, so that it won't be just you representing yourself. Somebody else should mention, oh, there's Laura Al-Junni working on these things as well. right? The kind of, we need to know each other's names, we need to know each other's work. It's kind of, I can't highlight how important it is without kind of, like, I see people now looking at, like when they come across to a name, they check each other on Google Scholar. Oh, this is not, this has very small number of citation. Okay, then increase each other's citations, kind of. So we need to get to know each other and each other's work. That's all I can say, really.
Yeah, and I would just expand this to, in general, anthropology is a discipline that transverse many domains, target public, fields, disciplines. So something I learned quite early is not to become too attached to a branding of myself as something, you know, very specific. And this is something that they usually you are taught at this kind of whatever neoliberal branding of yourself, but to be flexible enough to rewrite your profile and be sensible to the different environments where you have to make that profile work.
Should we move on to module B? Because I feel like, okay. You can save your questions for the after that part, everyone.
Yes, module B, which is entitled Strategic Skill Building for, Strategic Skill Building for Women Leaders. So we think that in a position of precarity or underestimation of one capacity and role, because maybe you might be tenured, but you are surrounded, you live in a climate, in an ecosystem that underestimate your capacity and your formal role. We think there are a number of possibilities to develop strategic alternatives. And those, I'm going to mention 3, and those are not or, but should be intended as and. So going back to what my point of supervision, my earlier point on supervision, I think it's important to reconfigure supervision, both from the perspective of postdocs, but also from the perspective of supervisors. So postdocs should pay particular attention to whom they choose to work with. A little bit what I anticipated before. This means looking for a supervisor is not only, you know, a star in your subfield or field, but who can give you support and you can build an allyship with this person and take a person who take into consideration your situation, your goals, and your vision. But for supervisors, this means creating the conditions for that allyship, but also to enable collaborators to understand that allyship involves reciprocity and accountability. What I call reciprocal and accountable allyship. And this reciprocity differs markedly from the obligations implied in the tradition, in many traditional supervisor postdoc models, because it is not grounded on hierarchy and uncontested power, but in trust, transparency, and mutual growth. But I know that all this might sound somehow utopistic and too ideal, because too many times postdocs have very limited choice or not choice about projects or supervisors. And sometimes supervisor might end up selecting someone who then reveal to not to subscribe and reproduce business as usual models of collegiality or non-collegiality. So in these cases, I think it's very important to be realistic in order to not be manipulated, understanding the situation, and while it's important to be professional and fair with the duties with your contract duties, and so do your work anyway, it can be healthy to reduce the amount of personal investment in that specific relationship if you see that is not as you if you see that is not generative in the sense that we are trying to advance in this workshop. And in the case of postdoc, look for other kinds of mentorship that can support your growth while working in that specific project. And in the case of supervisor, remain within a more formal and fair level of interaction. I know it sounds like a missed opportunity, is a missed opportunity for both when these cases happen, but is needed to reduce harm and stay healthy, and to redirect your energies on another goal. That is my second point. Because after too much time lamenting, I decided time ago to stop lamenting and acting. And you need energies for that, right? So, and my suggestion is to give due consideration and recalibrate your priorities, to think how to create transversal pathways. In particular, I am referring to applying for external grants that can give you independence and resources. And this, because this also would allow you to reconfigure hierarchies and geometries of power. I know that also here there are some problems, because usually these grants are they are part of this neoliberal framework. And there is this dilemma of whether it's possible to dismantle the master house with the master tools. But I think that if one approach this with awareness and support of a collective where you can, reflect on this, as Sertaç was saying, select very, very carefully who you can speak with, then is a very good resource that we should catalyze and use. We know that these fundings are very competitive, but I see still advantages of trying, because even if not funded, those are creative moments. So set your priorities to allow to have some time for that. Writing a proposal help you to develop your goals, develop your vision, to really feel what is important for you. And we don't often have this kind of time under the pressure of contracts, job hunting, or admin duties. And my third observation for this module is the need to balance international and national network and presence at conferences, publications, citations, and so on. So my suggestion would be to avoid to be perceived as too international or too national. Because especially if you come from Southern European countries, as I am, maybe your national environment is not so much integrated into a wider debate and might not valorize your international path. So you need, to kind of be strategic on that, kind of balancing your presence and your energies in both domains. And it's also a lot of fun. There is a lot of to learn and to, emancipate anthropology beyond a little bit the Anglo-Saxon, Euro-American format. So I stop here and I give the floor to Sertaç.
Thank you, Roberta. I have a couple of notes, but I want to say, so this is about skill building, strategic skill building. And I was thinking, what were the things that I wish people had told me when I was a PhD student. So I'm a very neurodivergent individual. So some of the things were the ones I was luckily already doing because of the way my brain works. So one of the things that I think is important to share as a strategy is that when I was doing my PhD, so the moment when you come back from the fieldwork and you need to create like a skeleton of your dissertation to your supervisor, which is composed of like the titles or the main ideas of the chapters, and then you are expected to write what in the next 2-3 years, finalize your dissertation. At least that's the expectation. So one of the things that I was doing, knowing that I only work better under pressure, time pressure, and strong deadlines, I was submitting the chapter ideas as sometimes abstracts to conferences. And remember, especially if you are submitting an abstract to a conference in North America, you have to submit it like 10 months earlier. And I didn't know if I would have the money to go through, but I was like doing this. Or sometimes even organizing a panel. If I was feeling like the abstract might be rejected because there would be no one else doing a similar research, then I would be turning into a panel submission, right? And it's kind of multiple things were happening at the same time then. I was setting a deadline for me, so which means by like 10 months later, if I am accepted, in the end of those 10 months, I'll have a 2,000 word draft of that kind of newly forming chapter, right? I was connecting with other people with similar interests, and it was a very niche, back then, very kind of narrow interest area. It was on leisure and sports and things like that. And I made really good friends who are now my like professional friends, like Emon Krell or Yasmin Rana, who recently got an ERC on sports herself. Back then we were PhD students, she and I, we both were. And then it was putting me into a kind of a position of planning my dissertation. But what I wasn't aware was that it was establishing me as a kind of potential leader, right? The kind of, I later on realized somebody helped me. I think somebody in the career services of Cambridge helped me to kind of put this into a narrative of establishing like leadership skills even when I was a student. So I didn't know that's where I was going. But then another thing that is, I think, very important for all of us to start investing into is kind of like thinking about ourselves and our work as our way of like, okay, I think PhD writing process really destroys our emotional connection to our own research. It stresses out us so much that in the end, we don't see this as our own thing that is dear to our heart, that is kind of like, who is here doing self-time with writing their research? We don't do that. We do this as part of like a job or duty or like something compulsory. And I think it's because of that very neoliberal system that's completely destroying our relationship with our work. So one of the things I wish people had told me is to kind of see this as a self-time, see research and invest into this as self-time. It took a good 4 years for me to change that emotional relationship. It's one of the reasons to that is because we find ourselves in a survivalist mode in academia. Like we need to finish, we need to apply to jobs, we need to find money, we need to survive, and that is also destroying another set of feelings in us, which is our relationship sometimes with our peers, right? So one of the things that I've been observing over the years, not only amongst my own mentees, but amongst a range of different colleagues and friends of mine, is that you start seeing your peers as your competitors, which isn't a very healthy state. So even if you are applying to the same jobs, if you couldn't get it but your friend did, You didn't lose that job because of that person, right? You just couldn't have gotten it, and you need to change your relationship with yourself and your friends, because your friends are going to, your peers are going to be your main support mechanism. It's really important to understand that you need to understand, if you didn't get the job, somebody else might have gotten it. And if you shift your thinking into saying, oh, I'm glad, instead of somebody rubbish, you got it. Instead of somebody with poor politics, you got it. If you kind of shift your understanding and start seeing your peers and friends as an important part of this allyship, that will be kind of a game changer. And I think it is part of the skills development, to be honest. Another thing, if we are speaking about feelings, I want to say creating a very healthy balance between being brazen and bragging, okay, and being humble, but in a different way. So humility should be in the form of understanding that I will be rejected in the coming years so many times, and if I understand this, then I can change my relationship with rejection. I can kind of help myself to sit and understand what's the angle I should improve. If you don't get into that humility, every time you receive reviewer feedback, you will be crushed maybe for weeks before you are able to sit in front of the feedback and start editing your paper or whatever, okay? Or like after a fellowship application and this and that. The kind of, it's really going to, like changing that relationship with rejection and turning this into an opportunity of humility is going to help you to improve. And that is part of the skills development. Being brazen is also equally important, that I have found, especially for women of color and women overall. Nobody is going to advertise your work if you don't advertise yourself. I have experienced, after I got into like Pembroke Fellowship, my achievement, which is supposed to be advertised in Cambridge Reporter, I had 4 degrees, they put only 2 of them. And I had it corrected. So you need to learn to occupy the space of success, okay? So it won't be like kind of bragging and being brazen. It's about like, you need to see this as a responsibility, sometimes for yourself, sometimes for your colleagues, especially if their names are being skipped. So you will realize things like, okay, I did put this in notes so that I won't forget. Like you will realize that sometimes your or your colleagues' contributions will be erased, correct the records. You will realize that you will need to advocate for proper credit in collaborative work. You will realize sometimes you, like, especially when, you know, you are working in collaboration with someone else who's coming from much more privileged background, they are ditching all the work on you and they are trying to take the credit. Undo it. Like, don't be the humble one at that moment. Be humble on the other, and at that moment it's time for you to be brazen, okay? And these are, like, if you ask me, skills development based on shifting mentality, and I think it is important. Okay, I might not have enough time, but I have one more thing to say that I didn't say before, which is, even when you are being a good leader, which is from the former module, sorry, I forgot that. Your intentions might be questioned. Learn how to make peace with it. You shouldn't find yourself trying to explain your intentions to anyone, even when you are kind of trying to defend the rights of your team members, even when you are trying to open up space. Like I have to say, like I had like try to organize like some skills development workshops for my team members so that they would kind of obtain promotions and this and that. Your kind of intentions might be pure or whatever, maybe not. Maybe you are trying to kind of win multiple battles at one, but you need to learn to sit with the moments when your intentions are being questioned. Sorry, that was a leftover from the former module. I just didn't want to forget that, and I think I used my time. If I forgot something, I'll say it in the next module.
Thank you, Sertaç. I
think there was a question actually in the chat directly also for you by Margarita.
Sultan, probably you have to go closer to the microphone, but I guess what you said. It's about the question we have on the chat. Well, Margarita Tess is asking, probably that goes to Sertaç. Do you think research as me time and some that help you? This is interesting because I thought rather the opposite.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Distancing emotionally from my work because neoliberal thinking would want me to feel that my only satisfaction's job. I still try to enjoy it, but I rather consider it as a job.
That's a great question. So I think I know the type of people you are talking about who lost themselves in their jobs. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if your work is something that you really care about, if you're trying to develop and we should I think it's very helpful. Like this is why I became an academic. I don't know about everyone. I'm not kind of doing some research about that's something that's completely unrelated to everyday life, that's completely unrelated to the people that I'm researching on, about, etc. So I kind of try to develop a research on a topic that I care about. So that's the difference. So for me it's not just a job, it's something I care about. But I think you are critical to the people who get lost in their job and try to kind of get a sense of self. In that, I'm also I think it's also important equally to not only not become those people, but also stay away from those people. They are most competitive. But that's not the type I'm talking about. I don't know if I answer your question, but basically what I'm trying to say is that if your project or your research is coming from a moment of intellectual care, that's also the legacy you will leave behind. Okay, so it's kind of it took a while. I realized that my relationship with my research was destroyed during my PhD because I was always trying to meet with the deadlines and this and that. It turned it into a job, and I didn't want it to be a job. I needed to become I became an academic because I wanted to be a particular type of writer. And writing is kind of I wanted to increase its connection to my heart, I guess. Okay, thank you.
If I can just add one word about this, and Margarita, thank you and ciao. I started, well, my work, my position as anthropologist became a work. So I got positions on exactly when I started to not consider it anymore as a work, as a job seeking endeavor. And I completely accepted the idea that I would never, ever become an academic. And I fully accepted that. But still, I found myself reading and writing proposals, but for the passion, for the fun on it, for the belief, the commitment, right? So, yes. And also last, it's also very healthy to also have other passions in life, have a different circle of friends and other hobbies or whatever can also pluralize your life.
Is there
Thank you, both of you. Actually, I think.
Can I add one more thing before we move on to the next? Because Sultan is warning us that we have 30 minutes left. There was one point I wanted to make about networking that I find, again, I think it's in line with actually the point that attracted attention with Margarita's and Liz's questions as well, which is on networking, which is one of the things that I find very helpful is that when people are seeing networking as some sort of transition, okay, or no, is it transition right word? What am I going to gain from this relationship? I don't think it kind of establishes a very healthy connection. One of the things that I have flourished a lot better is if I am connecting with like-minded, like-hearted colleagues and kind of try to generate intellectual stimulation based on that. But when I think networking has turned into an ugly term, but it can be a very like unexpectedly helpful set of connections where you are even kind of generating very creative and care oriented scholarship if you are able to connect with the right type of people. So it needs to be, I think, on maybe genuine reciprocity is a better word than just like a transaction, right? It's not a transaction. I wanted to say yes. Thank you. Lucy was telling me yes. I was trying to find that word too.
So maybe we should proceed to the next module.
Yes, please. Yeah. You were going to say a few words too, no?
All right.
Okay.
So this third and last module is entitled Personal Leadership Portfolio Development. So it's focusing more on really practical application of what we have tried to glimpse previously. I only say a couple of words that I think, from what we just said, there is this need again to balance between independency and solidarity, between methodological individualism and collective growth. Both are important. Sometimes, as also Sertaç just said, you need to be brave, independent, have initiative, position yourself in the light spot. But also it's important to never, to always have this together with the balancing of collective growth. So select very carefully your network, choosing the people you can trust, and then really keep your core values as a compass, the values of generosity, reciprocity, and gratitude. But I now pass to Sertaç, who has prepared a beautiful scenario to play with.
Yeah. So yeah, we did title this section as Personal Leadership Portfolio Development. But then by the moment we came to this module, we had already, I think, established a couple of important things. One of the important things I think we all have almost like inevitably talked about is how actually at the heart of that, academic precarities, at the heart of these kind of academia as an institution of elitism, of these kind of set of politically very problematic structures, is a particular type of people it actually creates, and we've all been through that, and that is like kind of this feeling of, what am I going to do next, this kind of the survivalist mode, as we kept saying. So that's why the way to, like, I think saying, oh, we should resist it is such a privileged position still. I'm not like suggesting that at all, but some of the feelings and positions that we invest in will stay with us. So because if we don't invest into these positions, all the things I mentioned about, being humility and brazen, and establishing allyship, and resisting the kind of competitive like sense, kind of that urge, if we don't do that, you know what will happen? You will see exactly the kind of people who might have bullied you. You might become the person who is now senior, like 10 years, 20 years from today, who is now senior, still thinking everybody's out there to get them, and being a very problematic senior and still seeing themselves as victim. We know that type. We know that type, kind of. So instead of kind of trying to like analyze this, I think like either Sultan or Panas is going to put the scenario we put together, and then they will distribute us to different rooms. And then we can discuss that scenario amongst us just to kind of see what our priorities are. And it would be hopefully generate an interesting conversation.
Sultan, can you do it?
Yes,
or
she's doing.
we'll have our
I will
wonderful
now.
tech support to prepare the room for us?
Okay.
So, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So I have.
It's just echoing very metallically.
Well, this is so strange. I'm so sorry. So the scenario should be in the chat, and I have created breakout rooms, but at the moment it seems that all of us were also assigned to breakout rooms. I think I can take you back, like, you know, Sertaç, Roberta, Panas, myself, I guess. So I would open the rooms and people will be assigned automatically. Or you can decide if you want to join. I would say, you know, Roberta, Sertaç, and we should not join. We should stay here. I don't know if we lost participants along the way, but it shows at 24. In any case, I would say Sertaç, Sertaç and Roberta, obviously, if you want to kind of continue on the scenario.
Yeah, we can start going one by one. I don't know how many groups were there, but let's go through persons. Was there anyone who chose person A? Any group?
I think we did.
Yes, you would like to reflect on it?
It was such a challenging scenario, to be honest. We kept going back and forth between it. I mean, first it was a process of elimination, so definitely C and D would be invited. But it was such a conundrum between person A and person B, and then I think we were leaning towards person A, because I suppose it boils down to values of reciprocity, generosity. I think there's also that issue when dealing with people with dominating personalities, shall we say. But yeah, it was such a difficult scenario, to be honest.
And so you chose the person A very established scholar, full professor, prestigious institution, that one?
Yeah.
Okay, and then so I understand how you eliminated, but why did you decide on this person over others?
Personally, and please, anyone in the group, please do jump in if I've missed anything. But personally, I think that, I think the risk in my personal experience working with people who are quite senior, there tends to be challenges when it comes to having a discussion that's based on scholarship and not actually an individual approach about their individual work, and there's also this issue whereby we sort of lean towards people such as person A because of their, attracting a bigger audience, potentially funding as well. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the panel will be as engaging, as successful, and, networking wise, meeting people who are like-minded doesn't necessarily happen with bigger audiences. So sometimes less is best. And I think
Thank you. And was there a conversation amongst any of the group members on person B? I think there was a question anyway, but we will get to that question number 4 later on.
Are you still referring to
B.
group?
Yes.
Yeah, but still the same group as right now, right? I was also part of this group. Yeah, we didn't talk so much about person B actually. So we just, thought it just had a difficult time deciding between A and B, but then thought maybe it might still be better to choose person B.
And what is your, and also Galia's, like career stage?
Yeah, so like late postdoc or PI of a small research project.
I'm also curious if it's kind of, although the scenario suggests you need to kind of think about yourself as third-year postdoc on a particular contract, whether your position and experience has been affecting. Thank you. And is there anyone who chose specifically person B in any of the groups?
We did choose person B. That was the second person that we said that we would definitely choose. Also, we said that kind of as like a practice to, I don't know, like if they are really a friend of ours, we know that sometimes it can be very tricky, how as we talked about, like friends or peers becoming our like competitors, or this is how we perceive them in some situations. But this is kind of like the perfect exercise to overcome this, maybe. So in our group, that was kind of sure that we would choose them.
Thank you. Any other?
Yeah.
Margarita, I think.
Oh yeah, we're in the same group, but we were also thinking it's not necessary. I thought that just avoiding this person, not inviting this person, I don't think necessarily would hinder, would make it better. I don't know, would make our chances better. It's not even engaging publicly with this person, might actually make, even us emerge. So I don't think that avoiding that would have been a good strategy.
Yeah, very smart. How about person C? Anyone who'd like to chip in on person C, or maybe you would like to continue with how you talked about person C? A brilliant early career scholar, just finished PhD from a less prestigious institution in Eastern Europe. No one has chosen her or him.
No, we talked a bit about person C, but we thought we tried to, with question 5, to consider their perspective, how they would read being invited by someone they kind of critiqued. And even though it might be a little bit awkward, we thought that it kind of shows that the person inviting person C wants to engage in a conversation, and then it might enrich the panel even more. But we also ultimately chose person A, and we thought maybe we could invite them to be a discussant or involve them in a different way, because then damaging a relationship with a friend might make so many other things difficult as well. But that was our discussion.
That's a very common pattern, actually. It's not kind of uncommon at all. Yeah, it's understandable. Any other group who would like to chip into the conversation on person C?
We were very hesitant between person A and C to invite, and then we kind of avoided the decision, to be honest, because then we said that, okay, we will invite person A for like a panel discussion, and then we will invite person C for the conference itself to present. But we were saying that in the description, it says that I'm not sure if inviting this person would make me uncertain about my own work, but we were thinking that it's actually the opposite, like inviting someone to your conference who is criticizing your work. I think that's kind of like a sign of confidence, because at the end of the day, you are kind of the organizer. So if you are confident enough to have a conversation about your work and about some of the critiques, then it's, yeah. So we didn't see that part as a concern.
Interesting. Very good. Thank you. It's a good exercise. How about person D? Any conversation in any of the groups on person D?
Sorry, before we go to D.
Lucy?
Yeah.
Oh, there's somebody. Lucy? Is it Lucy?
Just Lucy. Lucy.
Sorry.
But yeah, on C, like, so I apologize, but our group were mostly talking about, we're getting to know each other than talking about the ideas. But for me, I think what would be interesting, like purely theoretically, as opposed to actually in practice, is thinking about the quality of the debate, basically, and the quality of the outcome and sort of things like that. So for me personally, again, the group didn't discuss this. Like A and C sound like good options. You have to be brave, though. You do have to be brave.
Very good. Yeah. Can I also chip in? Actually, like in my experience, sometimes it's not the kind of intellectual agreement or disagreement, but people's attitudes that might shape the quality of the entire conversation. I'm thinking of this one time when we invited somebody who was potentially, based on their writing, would agree with a number of people in multiple panels, and hopefully they were senior, generate further conversations. But for some reason, because we didn't know their personality at all, they took it as an opportunity to crush. They were a recent professor, to crush the kind of more established professors. And it was a very kind of uncomfortable situation for us as junior scholars who put together that event. So sometimes it's actually about the attitude, and the scenario doesn't give much clues on that at all. How about person D? No one chose person D?
No, we were the most sure about person D, actually.
Yeah,
that person D was the first one that we chose, because we felt like not knowing her personally wouldn't be an issue necessarily. And if it's like very important for her and us, and also to have, I don't know, because I don't remember the description. I just, yeah, a very, she has been doing important work that has been undercited. So it's probably beneficial to have for everyone to have her there. And it's not an issue at all that we don't know her personally. That was kind of our idea.
And honestly, I think that's a bit of a biased personality description based on the sort of followership this session would attract. Like, I think the last person would be. I think Sultan is warning me to wrap up. But I want to ask, just maybe one person can reflect on question number 5. What habit are you reinforcing with your choices? If you were organizing 10 panels over the next, it says decade, but let's say over the next few years, what pattern would emerge? What kind of a pattern you would be becoming active parts of? This question is kind of strategically designed, because most of the time we make our decisions with kind of from a very small corner of ours. But if we were to kind of see ourselves as those part of a larger pattern, then what would it look like, basically? Sultan wants to answer.
No, sorry. I'm happy to jump in. I mean, like you saying, like in what kind of a position do you bring yourself when you organize?
Yeah, what habit are you reinforcing with your choices, basically? Yeah.
When you organize panels or organize panels
with your selection of people.
I mean, that's a form of cliquing, right? That's a form of like creating a certain enclave within a larger network or a larger kind of community. I mean, on the one hand, it can be very helpful. You know, you can establish, more deeper conversations, but it can be also very exclusive. That's how I see it.
Anyone else would like to respond?
Maybe I haven't formulated this thought very well. Oh, someone else was talking. Oh, sorry.
No,
Well,
please.
Okay. I was thinking, okay, not inviting person A. I would rather try to engage with person A in another setting, because I do not think necessarily inviting this person would make my chances, increase drastically. But then I thought, maybe the habit I'm reinforcing is that, I won't be able to handle this person. Maybe I thought, okay, maybe actually, I could be able to handle this person in public, even though this person is dominant. But if I'm the, the organizer, well, maybe I can shut this person down.
Great, thank you.
We have Lucy and then Liz, if we have time.
We can pass to Liz my question when.
Okay.
Okay, I think the answer to that question is in the answer to question 2, which is, what are the different reasons that you have for organizing the panel? And I think that might change over a period of 10 years. So it kind of depends where you're at, what's happening with your, with your career. But I do take that idea that we can sometimes not look that far. But I think question 2 was a really good question and I think they were all excellent questions. We just didn't have a lot of time to go into them all, but I think it was very helpful.
Thank you.
And I think it's time to wrap up, but we have also more webinars to follow. I think it's really amazing, the whole discussion and participation. But thank you, both of you, for your dedication and your contribution. Sultan, you want to say something?
Well, I think you've said it all. I think, this was fantastic, Sertaç and Roberta. I think you really
It was
kind
very
of created a
practical and I
space.
think useful for everyone, even for me.
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us. And, keep an eye out. We have another webinar workshop with Sertaç and Leonardo Sehlikoglu coming up on Wednesday. And then we'll have another 2 with Roberta and Sertaç again, kind of following the same line on women in leadership. Yeah, that's it from us. Thank you, Sertaç and Roberta.
Thank you for seeing the need for this. Actually, it's also
Yeah.
a visionary of EASA to see